judicial systems are going to occur, and it's going to do it in increasing fashion. The only thing that has kept us from complete takeover by now, I believe, is the fact that that great oath that I've taken several times to defend this nation from all enemies, foreign and domestic, the very heart and soul of the Oath Keepers organization, it's resonating with police officers and military people to the point that they are not confident of the numbers of law enforcement and military that would indeed stand and fight against the American people or take away what's left of the republic. So in that regard, we're some of us guys, 62 years old like myself, and others across the country that are in their 60s, been in Vietnam and so forth. They understood. They didn't like it, but they understood. They still understand. They were raised by parents that understood what freedom meant and what it was to really stand for what is right. You see, it's difficult to stand at a city council meeting when they're talking about stuff that is going to change your whole community, or Agenda 21 meetings at your county commission. What do we expect except to be overrun by those kinds of people at all levels that I've mentioned before in education and colleges? We have no hope that this can be changed short of a miracle of God. But in the meantime, we are relying, Doug, on people that have no motivation beyond survival to get from one day to the next. There is no agenda here for the good guys, not yet. It's coming, though, and I'll tell you when it's coming. It's coming the moment that Washington and the powers that be unleash our own Department of Homeland Security and the military against its people.
But, okay, according to my source, Greg and Steve, I mean, look, and Steve, you pointed this out, they're laughing, DHS, the brass, they're laughing at the fact that these grope-a-dopes allow their families, their wives, their children, their grandparents to be touched, sexually molested, if you will, at the airports. And I'm sure as a commissioned law enforcement officer, sir, you'd never touch people in a way that they're being touched, unless, of course, they were under arrest. You certainly not or under suspicion.
Well, that was an entirely different scenario, and I agree with you. You see, we've been conditioned, one more time. This is a matter of conditioning. It has nothing to do with security. This is to make people compliant and complacent about what they do and what they're told to do, so they just simply get in line and go where they're told. That's the only purpose we have here. There are other systems that would do much better, especially in TSA, and of course this TSA now is expanding across the country and is going to be seen on the highways and the train stations and the bus depots, and the TSA will be the equivalent of the Gestapo or the SS in its scope and the reach of this, so that we are now tolerating? Is that what we say as Americans? We tolerate what TSA does? That means we've acquiesced to it. We have surrendered to it. That's why we can't get anything straight anymore, Doug and Steve. It's because we don't know anymore right and wrong. We don't know anymore moral and immoral. We just forge ahead doing whatever we're told. That's why we are where we are at this moment in history in this year 2012.
Wow. Steve.
And Doug, I want to share something with you. I maintain that when the pulpits turned into, how do I say this candidly and not offendedly, but let me just say this. When Jesus said that we're the light of the world, and when he said that we're to let our light shine, he's talking about those who call upon his name and follow him. But when the church started embracing the social gospel at the expense of the supernatural redemption that the living God offered, we put up, as the church members, we put up with the mockery of Jesus. We put up with the defamation of living God. How dare the ACLU say they think that 4 of the 10 commandments need to be replaced? In the name of Jesus, I have prayed that the Lord will literally rain fire down. Somebody says, you're an angry man. You bet I'm angry, because the Bible says that God is angry with sin every minute. And you know, you guys, the bestiality. Greg, you remember when Senate Bill 1847 was repealed? In other words, your best friend, or forgive me, your 4-footed friend can now become your lover. I mean, we're talking about sick stuff, you guys. But the basic thing is that America has spiritually destroyed itself. It has come to this. This society has destroyed itself. And on my website, I want everybody to go and read the vision from Julia, or the dream from Julia, the very bottom of it, because there's certain words there that can be translated Hamas. When you put a C in front of it, it changes the meaning, but basically it means it's a crime committed through cunning or malice. C-U-N-N-I-N-G or malice, and it means that human justice doesn't have the means to pursue a crime that only the voice of conscience could prevent. Our consciences are seared. We didn't stand up for 70 million little wonderful created human beings who could have been the geniuses, the answers to our problems. They were snuffed out, and it was a blood sacrifice to Lucifer. And the dumbass churches, and I'm fired up. The dumbass churches wouldn't even stand up for the innocent. You know what's godliness in God's eyes? He said, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was naked, you clothed me. When you did it under the least one of these, then we put up with bestiality, okay? And then we put up with the trans species genetic manipulation, where every barrier and boundary that the living God had set in place for our safety, everything that God has created was wonderful and good. Now, these people in Congress, by the way, Greg, you know this, are all sexually compromised, all of them.
Yes.
They're all compromised. I sat down with the former head of KGB for Eastern Europe almost 15 years ago, you guys, and, you know, my critics can just go hang themselves and do everyone a favor. I'm serious about this. We're talking about, listen, we are talking about the murder of 30 to 50 million people, and they want it done in under 30 days. We are talking about never in the history of the United States government have Russian Spetsnaz troops. And by the way, you guys know, I was told that they all speak perfect English because they've been trained for this point. If they've been trained for this point, then go back 30 years, watch what happened. Obviously, when the Berlin Wall and came down, I remember my statement at the time. I said simply this: now, every spy that had to figure out how to make his way into the West was granted free access. So, you know, when everybody was clapping, I was crying. When everybody was saluting the end of communism, I said they just transferred it from their shores to our shores. But this is what we're talking about. We're talking about a generation of so steeped in sin. Now, look, I'm a sinner. I have been. You know, I sin still. I'll have to repent after this show, I guarantee it. But I'm pleading with God. I don't know if you guys are doing this, but like Greg, you know, you find yourself weeping for the nation. I've walked on the beaches in Europe where the Normandy invasion was, and been to the great battlefield cemeteries, and I've seen history. I have never been in the military. I can't even fathom what you guys see and have had to deal with. But I can tell you this, that Jesus is still the same answer. And when Dimitri Duduman was given the vision of America being attacked, it was predicated upon this time, where if you go to the Drudge headlines tonight, basically you got Al Sharpton and you got other people saying, let's go for it. It's time to have civil war. You know, look, if you and I said that, we'd be accused of terrorism. So the race card is being played. And here's what I want to say. I want to say to every black Christian out there, every Latino Christian out there, every American, every single American that doesn't put a modifier in front of it, who truly believes in the living God, that Jesus is the Son, don't follow the bait. Don't swallow the bait. You know, pray that God will deliver you, because the thing is that ethnos is rising against ethnos. That's what Jesus said, nation shall rise against nation. So the thing is, look, what do we stand for? Absolutely debauchery, depravity, and the total pollution of the world. You know, whether we're Mystery Babylon, which I believe we are, or the Daughter of Babylon, which John Price writes about, the bottom line is the same judgment will befall both of them. And this is where the people don't understand. See, Doug, even when you and I first started doing the HQ Intelligence newsletter, and Greg, I don't want to take away from your time, but, you know, there was a lot of this stuff that in those days patriotism was rising after 9/11. And I said, that's why people won't listen to me when I say God shared with me, and I'm on record. So, you know, let's see where my critics are on record. Most of them are too cowardly to even use their real identities or their Northcom, computer-generated identity. The bottom line is that America is going to be judged. And before America is destroyed, you guys, 15 years ago, those of you who've listened to me that long, God will reveal the sins of its leaders to the people and the people's sins before their God. Is that happening, you guys? The more corrupt, the more inane, the more, Joe, you asked a question about the Attorney General, lying, all the manipulation, fast and furious, in which U.S. federal agents, and I want to speak to the federal agents right now. You guys, you don't understand that they'll use you, and when they're done with you, they're going to throw you away. Some of you are in police forces or in the highway patrol. If you're told that you've got to take a foreign guy in your back seat or someone who's going to be an observer, you better be very careful, because guess what? They already have your entire dossier. They know who your family is, and they're ready to whack you when you don't toe the line or when they're done with you. Greg, you know that to be true.
That is correct, Steve. In fact, I've had a few men mention that to me. They said, well, when are we going to be on the firing line? And I said, well, if it doesn't come from within, because once you have stepped out and done some things that clearly are not in the police handbook, then you're going to be the next to be lined up and what? Taken out? Taken away? Certainly so. Will that happen in the military? I absolutely believe it will. Steve, we're not talking about 30 or 40,000 Spetsnaz. What I was told was 150,000 Spetsnaz in this country.
150,000.
And that's real.
Now,
that's
okay.
real.
But people will say, Greg, people will say, well, what can 150,000 Spetsnaz do? Versus 311 million people.
Well, 300 million, Doug, there's not, you're counting men, women, and children, and the Bible even rebukes this time period, saying all the men in the midst of thee are women. No offense, when you got metrosexuals and they don't know if they're either gay or straight, you got a problem, okay?
You have a president of the United States that came out today in favor of same-sex marriage and so forth. Look, I'm not going to get off into that trap, but I will say this. What can we expect of leadership what can we expect as a result of leadership like this on this issue or any other that is subversive to freedom, that is subversive to the Christian way of life, that is subversive to the history of this nation? My family goes back to the Revolution, and they fought all the way through. My father flew a B-24 during the war. I have been raised in a culture of fighting for freedom, but we began to look less at fighting for freedom and more for fighting for those who would destroy freedom than we did in previous generations. Therefore, we have raised the last two generations of this nation, with the exception of those men and women who have been called away to actually fight, but for what cause? You see, we have an impotent, we have a sterile generation of people in this country that do not know the meaning of sacrifice. They do not understand what it means to stand and be shot at, and to realize that your life can be measured in seconds by the 1 square meter, veterans. You know what I'm talking about here. 1 square foot or yard of ground that's yours, and that may be the ground that you die upon. When you have invested your life, your mind, your spirit, your body, your emotions in that kind of a life for months at a time, when you come out, you've got a pretty doggone good idea what it means to fight for freedom, even if it's not your own or your nation's at that moment. But we don't have any more, fellas. We don't have people like that understand that what we're talking about here is the heart and soul of what America was. You see, the reason we have no chance, Steve, and you've been so clear about this, and I agree with you, that we have no chance of reestablishing the republic as it is or as it was. In fact, I'm not sure we want to do that. But the chance is gone is because that people do not understand what it takes to have a free republic. It takes a relationship with the Creator, God, His Son Jesus. It takes a relationship with the powers that allowed this country to be founded and fought for and to expand. And when we decided we wanted more corruption and more evil and more self-satisfaction through whatever it was we sought, that it was then that we lost this nation. It wasn't just Barack Obama, although he's been terrifically involved. It wasn't just John Boehner and his Rhino Republicans and all the rest of them. It has been the American people. When I get up in the morning and shave, guys, I'm looking at the guy that's responsible. Ultimately, I'm responsible. I've tried to do my very best, and I'm like Steve. I'm a sinner. I'm saved by grace, but I'll tell you this. I make plenty of mistakes, but I've made my one promise, and I'm going to keep that for my children and my grandchildren and my good friends and neighbors, and that is that I will not stop until I'm gone from this world in going for that which is correct, right, honest, above board, and that which we all should be fighting for, because if we don't, then there's no point in